So today we're talking about how do you listen to podcasts? If you're not in the podcast world, it can be a little intimidating to think, how do you access a podcast? What exactly is it? You might have heard about podcasts, but are not quite sure, how to get to them. Today, that's what we'll talk about. So what podcasts are, they are basically like audio only shows. It's like a TV show or any kind of show, a radio show, if you want to throw it back to radio. Some of them are like radio talk shows, but they're audio. That's the thing to keep in mind is they don't have visuals with them. They're audio, and they can be on a extremely huge range of topics and very niche specific topics too, because podcasts are relatively easy to make and to produce. So a lot of people do them. They just do them out of their homes. And if you have an interest that's very specific, chances are there is a podcast about that. Some of the things that are broader topics for podcasts, there are tons of news podcasts, history, things about society, just talk shows, interviews. True crime is a very big thing. So if you are a true crime person, you will find a lot to recommend in the podcast world. There are ones that do foreign language training. So you listen to foreign languages as you're learning. And there's also plenty of podcasts too that are in other languages and that come from regions all over the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. There are fiction podcasts and there are nonfiction podcasts. So just like there are fiction books and nonfiction books and fiction shows and nonfiction shows, some really popular podcasts have actually been fiction, sort of sci-fi kind of mystery, true crime stuff. So just keep that in mind too. There's tons of genres out there. To access podcasts, you need to be using a podcast app. There are tons of these, but I wanted to go with one that was relatively universal. So I'm going to be talking mostly today about Pocket Cast. It's pretty well reviewed and it is available for Android and iPhone. I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about Apple Podcasts, just because if you have an iPhone, it might already be on your iPhone. So if you don't want to download a new app, that's another option. But today, just in general, we'll mostly be focused on this app called Pocket Cast, because whether you have a Android or an iPhone, you can use this app. It's pretty intuitive. It's not a super complicated app. To get started, like with downloading any app, you're going to start out going to your Play Store or your App Store. Again, for me, it's the Play Store because I have an Android. If you are on an iPhone, it'll be the App Store. So you're going to go into your store and say search, and then type in Pocket Cast. All right, hit enter. You'll see it right here. It's got a sponsored one here, but this is the one you're looking for. You're going to hit install. And once it's installed, you're going to click on open to get started. So Play Store or App Store, look up Pocket Cast, click on install next to the Pocket Cast icon, and then click on open once it's installed. And from there, you should see a welcome screen that looks like this. So we're going to say get started. You can log in if you already had an account. We're assuming that you don't. So we're going to just do get started. So click on get started. And then it's going to ask you a couple categories of things you might be interested in. So I'm going to say true crime, fiction, I'm just picking some, and arts. And that's so it'll give you some initial recommendations for podcasts you might be interested in. And if you add these now, they'll be added to your playlist. So the newest episodes of them will be added to your playlist. Just scrolling through a little here on the recommendations. So a bunch of different things, but you can choose any of those categories and it will do some initial recommendations for you. So let's say I do want to add a couple of these just so I can get a taste of what's available to me. I can have a playlist of a couple different podcasts that I could start listening to and see if I like them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through and pick a few. I'm going to pick this one called Scam Secrets. I'm going to do the Sleepy Bookshelf. I'm going to click on LeVar Burton because I used to love reading Rainbow. This one, Design Matters with Debbie Millman, I'm going to click on because I like Debbie Millman's wife. I think she's cool and I want to know more about her. Let's see. This looks interesting. Sci-fi thing, High Strange. So just pick whatever you want. You can always take it off your playlist if it's not something you're into later. And again, if you say you're interested in news, they'll give you an idea of popular news podcasts and things like that. So then it's going to prompt you to make an account. So you can sign up with your Google account, which is probably the easiest way if you have Gmail. If you have any other kind of email, you can make a login with that email address and a password. It's pretty straightforward. And then if you want to just keep looking and you're not ready to make an account yet, that's totally fine. You can say not now. You're able to listen to these podcasts even if you don't have an account. If it's something you don't want to commit to making an account for yet, that's totally fine too. I went ahead and made one with Google. It's very simple. You sign into your Google account and it gets you in. Just like a side note, somewhere in this process or while you're listening to podcasts, there might be something that pops up that says, do you want to do this free trial? Do you want to pay for a year's worth of whatever? What that is, that's ad-free listening. So you can subscribe to different channels with ad-free listening or the whole app where you don't have to listen to ads. But you can listen to all of these for free with ads. I've never paid for a subscription to these. It's just the ads are built in if you're doing it for free, but just X out of those if you're not interested in paying for a subscription, and know that you can continue listening for free, which is pretty cool. So once you've done that, either you've made a new account, you've signed in with Gmail, or you've just said not now, you're in. So you can see the whole library of podcasts available to you. So just looking at some of these, they're going to tell us like the trending ones, interesting ones. These are like award-winning podcasts. So you can just browse, click on the individual ones to see the explanation of what they're about. Just take a look around. Nothing to lose. You'll see these are fiction. So I clicked on this one called Charlie's Place, which is an award-winning podcast, just to find out more about it. I didn't know anything about it when I was going through it. So clicking on it, you can see, what is this about? It's pretty cool. So it's about a Black man in the Jim Crow South who opened a club that was integrated, like a music club that was integrated. And there's multiple episodes here when we scroll down. As with movies and stuff, a lot of them have trailers. So you can listen to the beginning part of them introducing the story or the plot line or the focus of the podcast. And then you can see if you want to get into it. So this is the description of this podcast called Charlie's Place. And then you keep scrolling down and you'll see episodes. So you can see how many episodes there are. I might be wrong about this, but most of them that I've seen are about half an hour long. I'm sure there are ones that are longer, but most of them run around a half an hour, if not a little bit less. So I'm going to click on this trailer just because I want to start hearing what this is about. And I actually have some audio from this that I'm going to play just so you can get a sense of what this sounds like.
Dance, lyrics, the creation of it, more than any judge's gavel, brought the races together.
In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, segregation was the law. But one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
You can keep listening to the trailer. It's about 2 minutes long, but just to get a sense, it's like you can start listening to it and see if it sounds like something you're interested in. That sounds pretty cool. This is a historical thing, great for Black History Month. Just sounds like an interesting story. When you do play any episode of a podcast, if you're playing anything from the app, it's going to pop up in a little window down here. And it's going to keep playing until you tell it to stop. Let's say we're listening to that and then we want to look at something else. Just click on this box and hold down, and it'll give you these options. It'll say mark played or close and clear up next. Just go ahead and close it if you want to close it. If it's something you want to come back to later, you can say mark played and it'll end up in your playlist. But if you're just closing it out, just say close and clear up next. And what clear up next means, they have the next episode queued up for you. If you do clear up next, then that'll just take it out of the queue for you. But just click like in this bar, this gray area, and hold down and you'll get these two options. Also, let's say somebody tells you the name of a podcast that they think is really cool. You can go ahead and search for it in the search bar up here. I'm going to put in the name of one that I listened to all the way through called Bagman. It was by Rachel Maddow. And it was about Spiro Agnew and the Nixon administration. It was just really interesting history. If you have something that somebody says, oh, you should check out this podcast called whatever, just go in there and type it in the search bar and it should just pop right up. Whatever podcast app you're using, they'll have the same sort of podcasts on them. When people make podcasts, they send them out to all these different podcast providers. So if you use another podcast app, they're going to similar places, but you can just look up a podcast by name. And once you found one that you're like, oh, I'm actually really into this, if you click on this follow button, what will happen is if the podcast is still making new episodes, so like this one, Bagman, that one's complete. So they're not making new episodes anymore. But a lot of the ones that it's going to suggest to you are ones that are still making new episodes. So if you say follow, whenever they release a new episode, that will show up in your playlist. So whenever you open the app and go to your playlist, you'll have all the ones you follow will have all the new episodes of those podcasts on there. So you can catch up. It's just nice to have it all in one place. So just click on that follow button. It'll do a little green check mark and you will have followed that particular podcast. Also, and this is something that I really like about the Pocket Cast app that's a little bit more complicated in the Apple Podcast app. You can find podcasts that are popular in other regions, which often means that there are podcasts that are in other languages as well. So it's a little tricky to find this, but if you scroll all the way down on this main screen, what you will see at the very bottom is this thing that says select content region. So it's defaulted to the US because it can tell what my location is. But I can change this. So let's say I'm looking for podcasts in Spanish, or I'm looking for podcasts in Chinese, or even if I'm looking for podcasts that are particularly popular in the UK as opposed to the United States. I can go through here, click on that, and you'll see a range of different regions. It's not everywhere, but it's many different regions. And you can click on one of those and you'll see the podcasts that are trending and popular in that particular region. So for this example, I wanted to click on China just to show you some Chinese language podcasts. One thing that's a little bit wonky about this is once you do that, so I selected China, it's going to bump me right back up to the top of the screen. So you have to scroll down again. But you'll see here at the bottom, you'll start seeing these are podcasts that are popular in China and the Chinese language ones as well. So you can scroll through here. I'm just going to click on one of these at random. You can see what this looks like. And it just gives you options, and you can click on them just like you would with any of the other ones and get a description of what the podcast is about. You can listen to a trailer. You can start listening to any of these episodes, but just know that you can go down there and change the region whenever you want to. If you want to go back to the United States, just go down there and do the drop down menu and go back to the United States. But it's a good way of finding things that might be of interest to you based on region or language or anything like that. And I mentioned too that when you follow a podcast, the new episodes will pop up in your playlist. I want to show you how to access those playlists. They do it automatically. You can make playlists on your own too if you have an account, but this is the basic thing. So this is the ones that I clicked on when I first set up the account. So I clicked on that bedtime stories and LeVar Burton reads and that science fiction one. Those new episodes have already popped up in this playlist where it says new releases. So if you go in there, we'll see a bunch of new episodes for me to listen to. If I want some entertainment for a good long while, I can just play that playlist and let it go, or just choose which ones I want to. One of the cool things I think about podcasts and audiobooks and anything that's audio is that depending on what it is you're doing, if you're doing something that's like a hobby or something that you don't need tons of otherwise awareness for, it's really cool to be able to listen to something and do something with your hands and your eyes. You can multitask in that way. It can be really calming. That's something that I did when I was listening to that podcast. That was the Rachel Maddow podcast. It really made me chill out when I was amped up, but also that you can do other things while you're listening to podcasts. And I think that is a really great thing. One word of caution I want to add to, just like any media, like I said, these are quite easy to produce and to put on the internet. Just use your discretion about what's fiction, what's nonfiction, what's a trusted source. If something sounds suspicious to you, go and double check things. Just be media aware of podcasts in the same way that you double check things in the news or double check things on social media. So just throwing that out there too. And explore. Look for whatever it is you want. These are just some pictures of some icons that go with popular podcasts. A couple of notes real quick on Apple Podcasts. So if you're an iPhone user, chances are this is already installed on your phone. So if you don't want to put a new app on your phone like Pocket Cast, that's fine. Just look for the icon that looks like this or search for it on your phone. That's the Apple Podcast app. And the features are going to be quite similar to Pocket Cast. They just might be in different locations. I'm just going to show you a little bit of a map of where things are. So when you start in Apple Podcasts, you're going to have a similar thing where it's like, here are some categories of podcasts you might be interested in. You can click on those and see what's trending, what's popular there, and also just like anything that might fall into that category. Their podcasts that are in other languages are broken down a little bit more specifically in these categories. So if you're looking for podcasts in Spanish, podcasts in Chinese, they'll have categories for those too. When you find something, when you click on an episode, you're just going to click this play button and start listening. And then the equivalent to the Pocket Cast follow button is this plus button here. So if you're really into science stuff, you start listening to science stuff and you want to add it to your playlist so that you get all the new episodes as they come out, you're going to click on that plus button and the new episodes will go directly into your library. And that's where you access that. So real similar, you can click on this new to see more suggestions, and then home will take you back to the home menu where there's probably suggestions. There should be suggestions based on some of the categories you've mentioned in the past or what you've listened to already. The thing with podcasts is they're meant to be audio. Some sort of higher produced podcasts, you may see YouTube videos that accompany them, but through these apps, what you're getting is the audio, and that's the point. There are some podcasts that are exclusive to a streaming service. That's to decide what you want to do from there. If you're on like Apple Podcasts and they don't have something, you might want to look for it on Pocket Cast. There is probably a little bit of variation there. It's not huge. If I wanted to look up All Things Considered, which is the NPR podcast, that's going to be on all of them. But some of the more sort of niche ones may be on one or the other. And Audible also has podcasts. That's a good one too. If you use Audible, you can access podcasts on there as well. Sewing is a great thing to do while also listening to a podcast, because you're repeating the sewing motion, but then you can listen to the podcast at the same time. That is a really good one. Any sort of thing like that is a match made in heaven.